Happy Saturday. Feels good to get up, to take care of all of the chores that you plan to do for the day. I cleaned my place, I did laundry. And while I was doing so, I was happy to see that Dr. Umar Johnson, or Dr. Umar Ifatunde is his African name, he went live while I was at the laundromat doing laundry. And I got so excited. So, for you guys who really do follow Dr. Umar Johnson, you'll see that he is in the middle of a series. He's doing like a historical recap of different events that have taken place. And he's given a timeline of these events, right? So, this video here, I'm going to do my response to a segment of his most recent video that he did this morning. His video is entitled Dr. Umar's 11-year Conscious Community Takeover Anniversary, Black America Since King, 1973 through 1975, the three-headed monster, the birth of black exploitation, television, tokenism, the birth of black feminism, and birth of the Drug Enforcement Agency. So, I am going to share my reaction to a particular segment of that live video that he just did today on October 30th, Saturday. I was on that live, like I said, I was doing chores, and hi Mustang, and I shared my perspective on something that he mentioned in the video, and we're going to get into that in a minute, where he was talking about pretendians, right? There was, I think, a few people on that same live who commented to say, maybe mentioning something relating to their Native American ancestry. Just simply stating that they have roots kind of here in America. Now, we all know, we all come from Africa, right? I think that should go without saying that we all originate from the mother continent, the motherland, but then there are a group of people, and I feel like there are segments of people, and I think that's where the confusion lies, right? Because there is a group of people who don't necessarily directly claim African heritage, right? They'll say, oh no, our ancestors were here, they were born here, and that could be true, right? So I'm not of the belief, I'm not the type of person that I live in dichotomy, right? Or these polarities of, oh, it has to be this or it has to be that. And if it's not this, then it's that. Like, no, it can be both. I think there's some truth perhaps to astrology because I'm a Libra, though I don't really buy into astrology. But yeah, I think that there could be both, right? And the same applies like for anything that I look at, right? It's not, oh, this is right, this is wrong. And we know there are schisms that exist across the board in many different disciplines and different fields, right? Even in psychology, there were many schisms, right? It started with the psychoanalytic theory, and then that branched off to something else because psychologists had their own perspective and they want to be proponents of their own theories, right? And they build upon earlier theories and they develop their own theories, and that's where you get new realms of psychology or new fields of psychology. With this, when you think about it, it's all psychology, right? So I like to make that analogy to science, to different disciplines. I am a psychologist as it relates to these schisms that we are seeing within the Pan-African movement, right? I feel like it's getting kind of convoluted, and I think that there needs to be a degree of clarity here. Like, we're talking about uniting Africans globally, yet we can't even come on common grounds when it comes to just watching a live video and learning about history, or even having a discourse about history in person. Like, there's this bickering and going back and forth, and I think that's very immature. I think that's very childish. I think that for me, I don't know about anyone else, but for me, I would prefer to have a more progressive discussion, hearing different perspectives, right? We don't have to be down each other's throat It doesn't have to be a war. I think we have this warlike energy, though, like this combative energy within us as Black Americans or as African people. Well, yeah, like we want to fight, we want a war, we're at war. Like there have been so many attacks against us. So we have this energy laying within us, laying dormant and laying active within us, and we get easily triggered. And I see it play out, and I feel like it's kind of concerning when you think about it. It's very concerning. Many people who follow Dr. Umar Johnson have raised and expressed their concerns relating to how he responds to people, African people, right, who express a difference of opinion towards him or a different perspective. And I think we got to be careful that just because a person has a different perspective, right, perspective is just a different view. It doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It's just a different way of looking at things. For people who study cinematography, you guys know what I'm saying. It's a different angle, a different way of looking at it. And that different angle depends on your position, depends on how you are looking at that thing. So I think that we, as African people, we want to unite. And there's this whole idea of this movement, the Pan-African movement, to unite us to fight against global white supremacy. If that's the case, then we have to put aside our own personal issues. Because there is an intersection, right? A person, and we can be divinely ordained. We talk about the ancestors living through us, right? And having this spiritual divination to bring about effective change in the present timeline that we exist in, right? As African people, no matter where you are on this planet. But then sometimes we neglect that, yes, there is another aspect of spirituality, psychology. And here he is a psychologist, I'm a psychologist, so we should be able to get it. And we all should know about, okay, mental health. Sometimes we try to push mental health under the rug. But there, I think, is an intersection when it comes to spirituality and psychology, and especially when it comes to African leadership, that we have to put aside our own, or put into check our own psychological issues, right, or disposition. You know, and I know it has come to surface that people have said Dr. Umar Johnson, he's a narcissist, he has these character flaws, you know, and I've made a comment about this many times before, that of course I support Dr. Umar Johnson. You guys know I love and support Dr. Umar Johnson, right? I actually discovered him several years ago, and I'll try to make this quick, right? But I discovered Dr. Umar Johnson several years ago when I met my ex on 2014. Our date was actually watching the Hidden Colors series, right? That was our date. So to set the context so you guys can see, for you guys who don't know who I am and what type of person I am, and who I surround myself with. So that was our date, and that's how I got introduced to him. But it was kind of like, you know, I wasn't really that deeply immersed into getting to know who he was when I was initially exposed to him. I was like, oh, he's a psychologist in this documentary. Cool, right? And then as time progressed, I got to learn more about him, of course, through watching his talks, his lectures. I never met Dr. Umar Johnson in person, but you guys know I have taken to social media to express my public adoration and support for what he is doing, for who he is and what he's doing for the African diaspora. And I still do. That's not going to change. Oftentimes people come to me on my own YouTube channel, my videos, and they say, oh, well, what do you think about Dr. Umar Johnson now? Do you still have the same perspective of him now? Considering, you know, people are trying to agitate him. And, of course, through that agitation, through those attacks, he reacts, right? It's going to change him. He's a human being at core. He can be as spiritually divine as he wants to be, as any of us are. But it doesn't take away from the fact that he is a human being, right? So, of course, he reacts. Oftentimes, I think he is not aware of it. where he just doesn't care. He's being his authentic self. Professionalism set aside, right? That's why I think a lot of times people question his credentials, considering how he has reacted. So I'm going to play this clip. Like I said, I still do love and support Dr. Umar Johnson, but as a free-thinking person, as a woman who has a very strong voice, I have my own mind, and who likes being misunderstood? So in this clip that I'm going to play, you guys will hear, he talks about pretendians, which he calls, and you guys will see, basically people who want to be Native American or Indian, right? I had to share my perspective on it, given that my maternal grandfather is Native American. My mother's father, that's just what he is, right? He's, of course, black too. He's African. But to know our history, to know our heritage, I think that's important, and I'll begin to share why a little bit later. So I had to share my perspective, and then he kind of called me out. You guys are here. He calls me out by my name, and totally misreads and interpret what my response is. Because my comment on his video was a response to another comment that I saw. So let's just go right ahead. This is all coming from love. This is all coming from love. So I'm going to go ahead and play this.
September the 12th of 1974. Shout out to my Rastafari family. September the 12th of 1974. Shout out to my Rastafari family. My Bobo Shanti Rastafari, my Naya Bingi Rastafari, my 12 Tribe Rastafari. On September the 12th of 19...
Okay, I'm going to be like pausing intermittently throughout this clip that I'm playing from his video, his live video that he made today on October 30th, because I have to interject. So I think it's interesting that he's repping Rastafari, and we should know who they are, right? People often mistaken me for being a Rastafarian, but it's like I don't reject it necessarily. I'm just like, all right, what's up, peace, you know? I get approached by many of Rastafarians, everywhere I go. It never fails. Everywhere I go. I'm from Florida, by the way, Jacksonville, Florida. And I think it's because the way I look, my presentation, my energy, obviously my locks. So I can understand why people assume that I'm Rastafarian, but we know that Rastafarian life, you can consider it to be a sect. It's a group of people, right? So just keep that in the back of your mind, how he pays tribute to Rastafarians, which, under the umbrella of Pan-African, they fall under the umbrella. If you look up Pan-African, that's a global African movement. It's a group, right? Global Africans, right? And then there are different sects within it. That's how I conceptualize Pan-Africanism. Just like I was paying an analogy with the field of psychology and how there are many different disciplines within psychology, right? There's the APA convention, the American Psychological Association convention. Is an annual convention that's held in different cities across America every year. And of course, you have all different types of psychology. There's many different divisions within psychology represented at the APA convention. Doesn't mean like, oh, one is right, the other division is wrong. No, they're all coming together to convene at this convention and to share their contributions. The different scientists, psychologists, researchers are within those different divisions in psychology are coming together to convene to share their contributions, right? And research and clinical practice. And so I look at Pan-Africanism as the same thing. Like, yo, we are a very diverse group, right? So let's continue.
74. Emperor Haile Selassie I is overthrown, ending a 3,000-year Ethiopian monarchy. He was killed allegedly August the 27th of 1975. There's controversy surrounding the identification of his body. Rastafari believe he ascended to heaven to meet his father, the Black Christ. Rest in peace to His Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I, one of the founding members of the Organization of African Unity, who built the headquarters of the African Union in Ethiopia. My first trip to Africa, I came in through Ethiopia, I came out from Ethiopia. My first trip to Africa,
One of the things that I love about Dr. Umar Johnson, I still love, is that he's so passionate, right? He's very, very passionate. But sometimes, like, your strength can be your greatest weakness, too. You guys will see what I'm talking about.
In through Ethiopia, I came out from Ethiopia, and I cried. I cried my first night on the continent, staying at His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie's hotel that he built, Hotel Gihan. I cried that night. And Africa been in me ever since. I am an African. If you want to be indigenous, if you want to be a pretendian, because we got this pretendian movement. Y'all know about that, right? Not Indians, pretendians. These are Africans pretending to be Indians. If you are a part of
Pause. Right? Now, you know that is going to trigger a lot of people. Why? Because there's a significant portion of African Americans, Black Americans, right? Black people here in America, descendants of Africans living here in America, right? Who do claim Native American heritage, right? There are some who solely claim Native American heritage, and then there are some who claim both, like myself. It's not that I don't really claim Native American, like, oh, I'm Native American. I don't necessarily identify myself as a Native American, but I do mention that my mother's father is Native American from St. Augustine, Florida. That's important to me. If anybody has a passion for learning their history, learning their genealogy, that would be important. We're talking about history, right? He's giving a historical timeline of Black America since King, right? And I'm assuming that's Martin Luther King Jr. he's talking about. So if you are a history buff, you care about history, specifically African history, and we know it didn't just begin with slavery, of course. There's so many different aspects of it, of African history. That being the case, let's continue. Let's continue. We're all over the globe, yo.
Good luck. If you want to be a pretendian, what is a pretendian? An African who hates being an African and wants to be a Native American. I call it the pretendian nation. How many
I think we just get caught up in nomenclature, and I said this in a response to a comment that was left, right? Just get caught up, but listen.
Pretendians we got on the live. How many pretendians we got? All you pretendians. A pretendian is not an Indian, it's an African who wants to be one. A pretendian is not an Indian, it's an African who wants to be one. I will never, ever, ever turn my back on my ancestors. I will never, ever turn my back on the men and women who put up with that hell of slavery and colonization and second-class citizenship and dehumanization. I will never turn my back on my ancestors because I hate myself. I will never turn my back on my ancestors because I hate my...
Now, I'm a thinking person. I have a brain for a reason. We should think, right? And so, yes, I drew to Dr. Umar Johnson because of his mission and what he's preaching. But it's just like sometimes you have to have a wake-up call. And I've gotten a wake-up call here in watching this video, and the fact that I made a comment relating to this statement that he's making. I replied to someone else's comment because there was a woman that commented and said, oh, my grandmother, I think she said, my grandmother is Native American, and I had to join in with her to say, yeah, there are a lot of us who have Native American ancestry, but we don't want to explore that. And you guys will see how Dr. Umar Johnson, he addressed me. He called me out by my name. You guys will see here in this video. And I'm just like, I had to clutch my African pearls. Like, it's just like, for me, I'm making this video for clarity purposes, right? Given that I did comment on that video, but I don't think he got a chance to see it. So hopefully maybe he gets a chance to see this. If he cares, he probably doesn't. But I think it's important. I think it's just important information to put out there in the universe as it relates to this global movement of Pan-Africanism, right? This initiative that we are a part of. He is the leader of the Pan-African movement. He calls himself the Prince of Pan-Africanism. He esteems himself very high in this movement. And I have much respect for him. It's not to say that what I'm saying undermines everything that I've said in regards to my respect for Dr. Umar Johnson, because it's still, it's still there. I did just finish eating, by the way, some DB chicken from yesterday. I got from this Senegalese West African restaurant in Harlem yesterday. You guys can go check out that video. But I think that's what people like. This is where it's important to understand communication. And to understand psychology, and to understand how to regulate one's emotions so that you can think logically, right? Because he touts being political, having a very high political IQ, and of course he's well versed in what he knows, his historical facts, right? But the thing I think about politics is that you have to, yes, be passionate, because it's the passion that drives you to do something. Like, it's a passion that makes you get up every day and you just put on your boots, you strap on your boots, and you're just going, right? Going despite the odds and the attacks against you. That's passion that is necessary for driving you. But on the same token, you have to be strategic, I think. And you have to have self-regulation of your emotions so that you're not so overly passionate that you're not able to think rationally and clearly, strategically, especially as it relates to responding to certain situations, because you're going to have a lot thrown at you. And I think therein lies the issue, especially what I see play out here, because it can create further confusion, and you can shoot yourself in your own foot. You can shoot yourself in your own foot. I don't want that for Dr. Umar Johnson. I don't want to see him self-sabotage and shoot himself in his own foot, defeating the whole purpose of the mission. I don't want that. We have to be a voice of reason here. And I know that he feels like he's in a league by himself. He oftentimes states that, like, oh, it's just me kind of against the world. And he's just, you're not in it by it. Why would you want to, this type of mission, why would you want to be in it by yourself? Because so that you can take all the glory, right? You can take all the credit for leading people out of this psychological slavery that we're still under. We're all responsible for that, right? We all play a role, I think, in coming out in this Genesis, this Exodus, I meant to say, of coming out of these psychological chains that we are under. It's good to have a leader, someone directing us, but I think it's important to sometimes take a step back, right? There are times in business, there are times in almost everything, right, where you have to take a step to analyze how far you've come, right? You do a survey to see, okay, where are you at right now? Let's take an analysis of what's happening right now, right? We know that we have this mission. We know that we have goals that we're working towards. How far have we come? Where are we at? we need to do an evaluation, right? To see, are you okay? Are you okay? And are we still working towards that mission? And how will we know that you're working towards that mission, right? How will you be able to measure your progress in working towards those goals that you set forth 10, 15, 20 years ago when the mission, this vision was implanted inside of you? How will you know that you're making progress? How will you know how much progress that you've made? Are there any checks and balances in place? I'm talking about Dr. Umar Johnson's. It's almost like it's his mission, right? And I think that's kind of faulty, because if you think of, oh, it's his mission, then what if something happens to him? This is my concern. These are questions that pop up in my mind, right? As I tune in and watch these live videos, it's like, what if something happens to him? Then who's going to pick up the ball? On this same live, and this is not the first time he mentioned it, he mentioned his idea of becoming an educational attorney. You know that his specialty is within education, special education in particular, and disrupting the school to prison pipeline. I have much respect for that, right? And now he's talking about, I think he just, like, in this particular video, he actually specifically indicated that he just registered for his LSAT exam, which we know is a prerequisite to getting accepted into any law school. So he's seriously considering going to law school. Nothing wrong with pursuing higher education. Clearly, I just finished my PhD. He has a PhD. He has multiple degrees, which I have much respect for. Nothing wrong with that. It's never too late either. But it also makes me wonder, okay, with the mission that he is currently on in building the FDMG Academy, what does he know that he hasn't disclosed to the public, right, concerning the trajectory of that school, the FDMG Academy, right? Because he's kind of like a one person band in a way, right? He's like a one-man army in a way. He's kind of doing it by himself, though he has people that support him. But I mean, like, in terms of having a board, right? A board of directors and committees set up, and committee members that, are active members and helping to make decisions on what is the best course of action that should be taken for this particular school, this organization. This is a whole entity here, right? And what needs to take place is like, it makes me wonder, like, does he know something that we don't know concerning the future of the FDMG Academy, that he's perhaps making a backup plan, right? Not to say he can't do both, right? We don't want to do the either or thing, that, okay, just because he's pursuing a law degree, that he can't simultaneously continue to build his school and to be the principal of the school. But it's just like, okay, how spread thin will he be if he has lectures that he's going to continue to do and travel nationwide, right? Or even internationally, the lectures, and then, once the school is open, he's going to be the principal. Not only that, but he also said he's going to teach the political science classes. And that is a lot. I feel like the role of being a principal, like an owner of a school, that is a role, like that's a big job by itself, right? And then to also take on the responsibility of pursuing a JD, to become a lawyer, especially if you're doing it full time, right? It's like all of these things at once. It kind of makes you wonder the accuracy of people's claims when they say that he is a narcissist, right? Because the hallmark of narcissism is having this kind of grandiose thinking, right? And not only that, but it kind of overlaps with being bipolar. Not here to diagnose, right? But I think it's just of concern of taking on so many different projects at one time, right? This manic way of being. And it can be great. There are a lot of artists who, had psychological disorders, right? whether it be bipolar, mania, schizophrenia, and they created great things, right? So it's not to try to undermine the the power that he has, the ability that he has, because sometimes it calls for that. Like your mind is just so expansive that it's busy, right? So a lot going on, and you have to be able to do something with it, or otherwise you will run yourself crazy, right? So you have to like take on all these different tasks, right? And then, if you're good at it, you can conquer all of those different tasks, right? Being a school principal, owning a school, running a school, being a lawyer, educational lawyer, and being the most requested scholar, lecturer across the world. You can do all of those things, right? But, people, I guess sometimes people are just a bit concerned, and it's not happening at the rate, at the pace that people want it to happen at. So it's just like, people are questioning. Me, I don't give up. I don't lose hope. I don't believe in losing hope. Especially in something as sacred as this school. I don't. However, I do have my opinion. And when it comes to the unity of African people, I think it's important that we understand we are a very diverse group. And to accept that, to embrace the diversity. Not to say, oh, you guys over there and you guys over there. But let's continue.
That's what's wrong with the pretendian nation. The pretendian nation
sounds like
themselves so
tribalism.
Much, they want to turn their back.
He's doing that.
And I'm not mocking my Native American brothers and sisters. I'm not mocking my Native American brothers and sisters. I have a lot of Native American supporters. I'm just trying to expose the hypocrisy of the ideology of the pretendian nation. What is a pretendian? An African who wants to be an Indian. Brothers and sisters,
wants to be or is. If you have Indian blood in you, you have Indian blood in you, right? I just feel like we shouldn't get caught up in these labels necessarily, the nomenclature of these labels. Not the extent to which we become divided as a people, right? I think it's important to know thyself, right? And part of knowing thyself, if you're going to be a healer, it's important to tell people that you accept all different parts of yourself, right? It's not that, okay, you affiliate yourself with being African, you identify. I think that's important. That goes without saying. Of course, we're African, right? But it's not to neglect other identities that you have, given that we are mixed, right? And I feel like you can embrace whatever identity you want to embrace. If you feel like there's pride within that particular ancestry of your DNA, whether it be Native American, because they have their own, like Native Americans have their own culture, their heritage, their history. And I think when we think of Native American, we think of like some fair-skinned people or white people or, people with fine hair. And it seems like kind of diametrically opposed to the concept of being African, when it's like, no. That's why we need the Hidden History Museum that Tariq Nasheed is developing. That's why we need that, because there's so much history just within that subculture of Africanity that we need to revisit, that we need to educate ourselves upon. I feel like that's an issue. If, like, at the beginning of this clip, he was talking about Rastafarian culture, right? That's a different sect within Africanity. You embrace that, but it's just like you pick and choose which sects you want to go with, right? You like the Igbos, you like these, you like the Yoruba, but you don't like blacks were Native American. Can we explore that? That's important. It seems like that gets pushed under the rug. Why? Because it has American attached to it. And then he's like, oh, like he's saying he's not making fun. But there are a significant number of us who, you know what I'm saying? Like, whose family identified with that culture. That don't take away from them being African or black. It's just that it establishes what type of person that they are. It establishes a point in time or in history where they were at. Where those African people, we know African people all over the globe, right? We circumnavigated this whole world. So when you hear African people affiliating themselves with America or Europe or Asia or the Caribbean, it doesn't mean that they are trading places or giving up their Africanity for those geographical regions or nationalities. No, it just simply means that they're saying we were here too. We were here. There's a place and time when we were here. And of course, if we were here in a certain place and time, there's a whole culture, there's a whole history that needs to be revisited. But no one wants to do that. And so that's why I have respect for Tariq Nasheed, who has taken a certain segment of the African diaspora, particularly being foundational Black Americans or Native Americans, Native Black Americans, shall you say, to focus on that particular niche within the African diaspora. It doesn't say that, it does not to say like, oh, they're neglecting their African roots. Like, to me, that's kind of ignorant. And to look at that as a threat to the Pan-African movement is silly. It's very silly. I'm going to say more about that, but let's continue with this.
September the 25th of 1974. On September the 25th of 1974, Barbara Hancock is the first Black female White House fellow. More tokenism. More tokenism. More tokenism. September the 25th, 1974, Barbara Hancock becomes the first Black female White House fellow. More tokens. October 1974.
So he's giving like dates in history.
From my wifey. Oh, my Facebook wifey. Thank you, baby. Thank you, baby. Hit the Cash App for the 11th anniversary, $sign Dr. Umar Johnson. Hit the Cash App for the 11th anniversary, $sign Dr. Umar Johnson. Don't forget to hit the Cash App for $sign FDMG School as well. Don't forget to hit the Cash App for $sign FDMG School as well. December the 10th of 1974. Danielle. That's true, sister.
This is at timestamp 127.50. So, give me a second, because I want to read you guys the comment that I responded to, which prompted him to address me here. This is important. We'll go to real-time comments. Hold on. It's just like, given that he says he is a prince of Pan-Africanism, right? He's a leader of the Pan-African movement, right? His mission is to unite all Africans across the diaspora. Not to say he's not doing that, and he's continuing to do that, but it also seems like, and they say sometimes it may not be what it seems, right? So something can be happening, like you can see something happening on the surface, right? But it may not necessarily be that. It could be the complete opposite of that, right? And it does partly seem like there's a lot of division that is happening with him being the leader of this Pan-African movement within his you know what I'm saying, organization, right? There's a lot of division, and it shouldn't be that way, yo. We should not be divided. This is the beginning of the video. I'm about to go to timestamp 127.50 here. Give me a second.
That's what they call
127. It's like, but when it comes to the art of war and chess, you can't go by what it looks like. Because it can look a certain way, and it may not be that way.
74. Danielle.
This is me who he's talking
That's
about.
That's true, sister.
Hold on. Oh, let me go with the comments. I was trying to toggle the comments to make them real-time comments so that you can see this comment here.
Have Native American in my family. There's white people in your family. You got a little bit of everything in your family. But why do you see the need to give up your predominant ancestry?
Okay, I'll just do a recap. I was trying to find the actual real-time comment. So there was a woman who basically said that, like I said earlier, she said, I think her grandmother, so my grandmother's Native American, right? And then I gave the reply that a lot of our ancestors were Native American. That's just fact. But no one really wants to explore that. And so this is where he comes in, because he saw my reply to her comment, and this is where Dr. Umar Johnson comes in, and I'll start it here.
I have Native American in my family.
Let me go.
There's white people in your family. You got a little bit of everything in your family.
Right here.
School as well.
Let's go here.
December the 10th of 1974.
All right, so listen.
Danielle. That's true, sister. I have Native American in my family. There's white people in your family. You got a little bit of everything in your family. But why do you see the need to give up your predominant ancestry? Your predominant ancestry, which is African. We are the oldest genes.
Now he asked me the question, because he assumed, the question that he's asking to me in this video is an assumption, right? He's responding to my comment, and by the way, my comment was left under my profile, Danielle Ubawa, U-B-A-W-A. Ubawa is basically my nonprofit organization. But he's responding, drawing conclusions out of assumptions. And I get it, right? He's been exposed to many people, black people, who you denounce, oh, I'm not African, I'm Native American, right? So he's assuming that because I joined in with the woman who says that she's just saying, listen, my grandmother was Native American, right? To say, like, careful, slow your roll, because this is after he goes and be like, woo, 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 woo. Y'all pretendians, people who are identifying as Native American, people aren't, now you can't say people, right? Because that's a generalization, right? You have to be careful with words. Like I said, there are a group of people, African Americans or Black Americans, who are like, nah, I'm not African. I don't have nothing to do with African. There are a group of people like that. I mean, we're Native American, we're Moors, you know, we circumnavigated, we've been here, we're not brought here, we've been here, right? But just because a person like myself and this woman that commented, she stated, just because we say that certain of our family members, our ancestry, were Native American, doesn't mean that we're denouncing our African roots. And I feel like that is where the miscommunication lies, right? That's where the miscommunication lies. And that's where the dissension lies. That's where the conflict comes about. Where is the unity in that? If you're jumping to conclusions, and you're easily triggered as a leader to assume that this is where a person's coming from. Because he's addressing me here in this segment here. In this part right here.
We are the strongest genes. We are the strongest DNA. Why do you want to give up your predominant ancestry?
I'm like, what?
To identify with a minority ancestry. That's the question.
I'm like, what? I'm like, who's giving up Africa? I would never give up African. I'm just saying that there is a part of our ancestry that needs to be explored. There's history there, hidden history. Why is no one talking about that? That's the reason why the Hidden History Museum is going to be fucking successful, because no one else is talking about that part of our history. You know, when people think of, like I said, Native Americans, they think of, oh, this group of people that have nothing to do with Africa, not establishing this connection. It's just like, no. If you go to the Hidden History website, Hidden History Museum website, you'll see that, because a lot of times people misinterpret Tariq Nasheed's mission to assume that the foundational Black American movement is to denounce your African roots. And he makes it clear that he acknowledges that we have roots in Africa, right? That's already established. It being established goes without saying. It's almost like being redundant, keep saying, okay, having to say, okay, we have roots in Africa. Yes, we do. And we take pride in that. But there is also a portion of our history that has went unnoticed, that needs to be taught. There's a lot of rich history there that needs to be uncovered. Particularly when he's talking about foundational Black Americans or Native Americans, he's talking about those group of Africans who were here before this transatlantic slave trade, okay? And not just here in America. We were all over. That is what they want to uncover. And so when people mention that, it's just like, okay, there's harm. We get attacked. It's just like, why he's asking me, assuming that this is my stance, or why I'm so quick to denounce my Africanity. And I'm just like, why are you so quick to make assumptions? And that's where the division lies, because there is misinterpretation. You misinterpreting a person's comment, or you're looking at them as if they are the enemy. If you're saying you're a Pan-African leader, we should see love in everyone, even including white people, right? This goes deeper than, oh, Pan-Africanism, right? Because Pan-Africanism is more political, right? But when you are really in touch with spirituality, and we're not talking about necessarily African spirituality, we're just talking about the true essence of being a spiritual being, then you know there's no separation between you and I. No matter who that you is. No matter the color of that you, there's no separation. So you see yourself in other people. That's a whole nother level there, though. That's a whole nother level of spirituality, I feel like, and consciousness that he hasn't quite tapped into. We're talking about strategic warfare. We're talking about a deeper sense of spirituality. He hasn't tapped into that. We're talking about before there was Christianity and Islam, or even African spiritual. We're just talking about before there were even labels of this type of African spirituality or this. No, we're talking about just being. Just being. When we were considered gods, right? And understanding that we are each other's reflection. So when you're talking about unity, in order to unite, you have to at least come in agreement with that premise that we are one and the same. Politics and racism, that shit is a fucking joke. It's real, but you have to understand the bigger picture of why those systems were created, to have us warring against each other. And then you drink the juice. Now you're a part of it. And you're trying to combat racism, their system, with their tactics of being divisive and going to war and fighting. And they got you fighting your own people. This is where we're at right now. Do you see this? You're fighting your own people. You're no longer fighting white supremacy. He's wearing all this regalia. He talks about this. And you have to listen, when you hear a person speak, right? And they're speaking, trying to deliver a message, and that message can be very much well for the people, but it's also for yourself, because there's no separation between you and other people. So you're preaching to the choir, you're preaching to yourself. He talks about this a lot. the division that people are creating, like you are a part of it. That's why it's good to do an evaluation, to take a step out to see, okay, what am I doing in this as a Pan-African leader? Who am I now, right? I don't know how long he's been in the game, but let's say, I don't know, 10 years, 10 plus years, right? A decade. You've been in the game for a decade now. Evaluate yourself. Take a step outside of yourself to see, okay, am I still along the mission? Am I still, like, you want to feel like you are, but are your actions in alignment with this mission that you say that you're on, though? Or are you further dividing? Are you a puppet? And that's the reason why you have so much animosity and anger. You see the anger. That's what I'm saying, yo. This isn't love, though, right? You see the anger that's coming and spewing from him. Why are you so angry at your own people? It's one thing, okay, you want people to wake up, but in your love, if you have love, right, if you have self-love, that love that you have for yourself as an individual person, it's going to be easy to share that with other people. It's going to be easy to do that. And like I said, I think that there's many parallel processes that are happening within Dr. Umar Johnson and his mission, right? We're not here to say, okay, he's slipping, right, in his mission, so that makes him a bad person, right? No. He's still doing well for himself and for the black community. There are things that he does great, right? He has, all these facts and nooks and crannies that he knows about his history, and that's great. But in a practical sense, when it comes to really having love for your people, and you have people who present a difference of opinion, of course they're going to be different, because you have to acknowledge that Africa is diverse. African culture, we're a diverse people. So we're not all going to look and talk and sound the same. We're not. But if you truly love your people, would you have a respect and appreciation for the diversity within the African race of people? Doesn't sound like he does. Okay, he talks about our Rastafarians, but what about the African people who were here many, many years ago before slavery, here on this land? It's not to, say, I'm an American. We're not talking about that. And that's where someone else who replied to my comment, this guy, he's a Mason, somehow took what I said out of context, and he was like, oh, well, American is an Italian word. We're not talking about nomenclature. We're talking about looking at history. Let's focus, you guys. So we're on the same, we're looking at history. It's not about right or wrong. We're not trying to combat each other. We're not here to fight each other. We got to come on the same accord, you guys. It's looking at our history to see that our history is very diverse. And just because you have black people who identify with certain aspects of a certain group of people, i.e. Native Americans, it doesn't mean that they're renouncing their Africanity. Are you kidding me? To think that, it's like, it makes you wonder, what is that person's thought process for him to take that train of thought to think that just because I said, and other people have said this on his live, to say my grandmother is Native American, my grandfather is Native American, for example. Or a person can say, oh, well, I'm Haitian, and then he goes, oh, well, I think he is a quote, I think he got from, who did he get this from? Frederick Douglass or Marcus Garvey. I think it was with Marcus Garvey to say, oh, I would never give up an island. I would never give up a continent for an island. It's just like, it's not about picking or choosing. We are who we are. We're African. But even beyond that, we're spiritual beings. Right? I think, like, this is what we got to get beyond this, okay, being African. African is, yes, we have an attachment to that, right? Because that has a culture within and of itself, right? But even beyond that, like, we're gods. We're a reflection of God. We, in totality, are God in the flesh. Every living thing. And so it's not to say we're giving up our African roots, but if we want to go there, like African culture is more than just wearing dashiki, right? And pouring out libations. And I just feel like it goes deeper than that. But I'm glad this happened. I have more to say, more to share. I'm glad that this happened, though, because it allows me to think and other people to think a little bit deeper about this. Of course, people are going to embrace certain subset cultures, right? Whether it's identifying with being Haitian or Jamaican or whatever. He says that when he shouts out different Africans, he was like, "Oh, my American Africans and my Eritrea Africans and my Nigerian Africans and my Ghanaian Africans and all these different countries across the world, Africans." So you know those different countries have different cultures, and even within those countries, there are different tribes and subset cultures. And people are going to identify with those cultures. But why is it when it comes to American culture and people are identifying with certain subset cultures within America, is like, oh, you're looking at them crazy. That's the reason why Tariq Nasheed, that's where he comes in, right? That's the reason why he has developed that. That's his niche. To study foundational Black American culture, to study the culture here on this. It's not about American culture, American. It's about a group of people that were here in America, right? This territory that we call America. Don't get distracted by the name American, though that's important so that you can pinpoint, especially when it comes to history and studying genealogy. You have to have names, right? There are documents attached to the name America. You're trying to do research. Of course, that name America is important to have, but to be associated. But it's not like, oh, you're bigging up that and you're trading your Africanity for being an American. Just like, that's why I feel like it's not about that. When people start to get in these little petty arguments and disagreements, especially Dr. Umar Johnson, and finds himself get caught up in these often, in these kind of like reenactments, as we call it in psychology, on his live video while he's live with people, it's not about the little petty agreement. It's not about those little petty differences. Or it's not about, identifying as Native American and, like he's making jokes. It's not about that. It really shows a deeper part of who you are as a person. Careful. I love Dr. Umar Johnson, but careful. It's showing a different part of who you are. And people are seeing that, and then you're trying to make sense of, why do I have so much hate? I must be the greatest scholar. I must be the greatest person. And that's your way of making yourself feel better about it, right? Massaging this tension that you have within yourself, this anxiety that you have within yourself. And that can be partly true. But perhaps everyone who we say is a hater, right? Just because they disagree, you say they're a hater. Maybe they're not a hater, though. Maybe you just hate them, which is an aspect of you. They're reflecting back to you who you are. Because we are each other's reflection. So maybe they were sent to reveal a certain aspect of you, and it's going to keep happening. It's going to keep resurfacing itself until you come to accept this flaw within yourself. Because there's an issue there. That's problematic. Of course, we know that anytime you're building something great, you're going to have opposition. So let's not confuse the two. Of course, there's going to be people trying to oppose that, but those people that are opposing is really fueling the fire, right? And pushing you along, right? But let's not get so off the beaten path to see how you're shooting yourself in your own foot, right? You're self-sabotaging yourself, and you're making your own supporters turn against you. Like, not that you're making them, and you're making them in a sense, right? Because you have positioned yourself as their enemy. Not that they necessarily position themselves as your enemy. You position yourself as their enemy, like, okay, you're over there, and listen, you'll see what I mean. Because what I'm saying is just coming from this video.
Don't see them giving up their Europeanism, calling themselves Africans. The only people who give up their Africanism to be a white person or a multi-race or a mixed race or Native American is you damn pretendians. I didn't say you don't have some native blood. I said you're not a native. I didn't say you don't have no native blood. I said you're not a native. Wherever you are in the world, you got there from Africa. That is a biological, anthropological, genetic, scientific fact. That is a fact. So I didn't say you don't have a native in your blood. You got white people in your blood. Are you going to call yourself Irish? Are you going to call yourself a Jew? You don't look anything like them. You are African. Everybody can look at you and...
For me, my response and my reason why I commented and shared being in alignment with the other commenter who mentioned that I mentioned that my grandfather is Native American. My whole point is not to say, oh, I'm Native American, to identify. For me, it's not about that. I can care less about that, right? It's like you have a wave of people, black Americans, who are taking the African ancestry DNA test because they have to be told who they... I'm not of that wave. I don't need to take no test. I don't need none of that shit to tell me who the fuck I am, right? I know who I am. Spiritually, I know who I am. I don't need any label. I don't need to be accepted by any tribe or any fucking group of people. That's not why I'm here. I don't need that. I feel like that is like superficial stuff. And I feel like that's the whole thing about politics. It's like a superficial stage that has been created. And people are on this stage and going back and forth and fighting. And it's just, that takes away from just existing and being. That's the space I'm in. To just be. To just exist. Right? That's how you know you reach a higher level of consciousness. Beyond fighting about African versus Native American. It's just like, seriously? Those things are important, yes, to know, okay, to attach yourself to a certain ancestry and cultural heritage, you know. But that's in you, though. It's going to be, no one can take that away, right? So that's why I can rest assured knowing that I can care less what someone thinks of me or doesn't think of me, because it's in me, right? So it's in me. You can't take that away. It's in me. And I take pride in that. Why would I be upset about that?
Now, you African, accept you because you hate yourself. You hate yourself. It's the same reason you perm your hair. It's the same reason you wear blonde hair.
Now, mind you, this comment, I'm going to go back, I'm going to play it and without cutting it off, right, so you guys can see. He's directing this towards me. Do I have permed hair? Absolutely no. But I think he was also trying to make a general statement to say you, as in black people who he assumes hates himself and want to be Native Americans, is like, that he calls pretending. It's just like, hold on, don't put me in that freaking I know exactly who the fuck I am. The question is, do you know who you are and do you love yourself? Because oftentimes, people project shit onto other people. And their projection, they're casting spells, right? They're casting spells, and these spells become curses that lie upon you. And then these people then want to deliver the solution to that problem, that spell they put upon you. Baby, this is why it's important, yes, to know your African roots, to know your Native American roots, because you know, in those practices, in those cultures, right, which is pretty much all umbrella under one culture, right, being melanated people, let's say. There are certain cultures you just don't fuck with certain people because they have a certain protection over them. They just do. You know, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I know my ancestry. And that shit goes deep. I know my spirituality goes deep, and especially having those roots. Knowing what it means to truly have certain types of roots. You gotta be careful. Just be careful, right? Because we know certain things, right? People talk about voodoo and this and that. Listen, a lot of different cultures practice that, even Native Americans, and we're talking about black Native Americans. So just be careful, okay? Just be careful. And it's not something that an individual does. It's what's happening in the spirit realm. Certain energies are just protected. We're all protected, right? But I'm just saying, though, certain energies are protected, and you got to be careful what territory, you know what I'm saying, where you're going, where you're trying to embark upon, who you're trying to cross, because you wonder, like, damn, what did I do? Why am I experiencing all this pain? Because you fucked around and crossed the wrong person who has a certain divine protection over their life. You got to be careful. And people who are divinely protected, you ain't got to get on here talking all that shit. You just don't. You don't have to fight people. I've never been that kind of person that feel like you got to go and prove yourself and get online and fight this person and fight that person, yo. You don't. Just devote. I wish that he would be more focused to devote all of this energy towards his mission. Right? That's why I feel like something is wrong and he needs balance. I feel like he's not balanced within himself. Talk about masculine and feminine energy and all of that, and consciousness over cookies and politics over punani, and listen.
Ourselves, and we're constantly looking for something else we can be. We want to quit being African. I'm not going to stop you. If you want to be a pretendian, be a pretendian. But I promise you one thing. Cherokee Nation is not affirming you. Which Native American nation going to affirm you pretendians? That's what I want.
So for him to pose that question goes to show where his line of thought is, right? Because he's looking for acceptance. It's clear. He's looking to be accepted. But when you reach a certain degree of spirituality, you don't need anyone's approval, validation, or acceptance, yo. There are different types of people out there, right? There are people who live in certain different realms. I don't live in that realm of needing acceptance. I live in the physical realm, but I don't live in the physical realm, if you get my drift. Right? It just makes me wonder which realm is he living in that he feels like he even has to say that. Needed to be accepted by some Cherokee Nation? That's superficial. To be accepted by them for what? What is that going like? To even be accepted by West African cultures, nations, tribes, for what? I wouldn't mind going to Africa. I do plan to go, but I've come across so there's levels to this shit. I've come across so many people who say, you know what, Africa lives in you. Africa is all over the world. It's not about having to, you got to go make a voyage to a certain territory or a certain geographical region. You got to just go. You got to go there. Because y'all know that's some bullshit when you think about it, right? Why? Because it's money associated with the return back to Africa movement. There's money attached to that. It's all a money game. You don't have to go anywhere to know who the hell you are and to get in tune with your roots. You got to go into a quiet space in your mind. But you don't physically have to go anywhere. Those things are nice to do. But let's be honest. The way we see Africa now, right? When people are going to visit, they're buying freaking $1,000 round trip tickets to go visit Africa. And when you get over there, I know people have this glorified experience in their mind, right? Because they kind of created this reality in their mind. And it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy when they feet touch the soil and look up in the sky and it's like, oh my gosh, it's heaven. It's like the African dream. And I think it's quite bullshit if you ask me. Because, and I say this, you have to like hear a person out, right? Don't look at me and, oh, now I'm your enemy kind of thing, right? Because I'm saying this to say, the way we know Africa to be, right? This magnificent place and this holy, sacred grounds and this the origin of humanity. Yo, that shit has been so colonized, and people have come and ripped Africa to pieces. The culture has changed. Just look, the people don't even speak their language anymore. Some, right? You know, the language has been stripped. Their mindsets have been stripped. The power, their spirituality has been stripped from them. They're not the same. It's not the same Africa. Why do you think so many black Americans go over there and they're disappointed? And they honest enough to tell the truth about it. Because I follow a lot of vloggers who've gone to Africa and honest enough to tell the truth. Like, you know what? It's not this African dream that many people try to paint it out to be. It's just not. It has its good parts to it, right? But it's just like, listen, I live in New York City, right? Africa is here. There's a high percentage of Africans here, right? And when I go to the African market, of course I feel a sense of at ease. Because yes, it's a different vibration. So don't get me mistaken, right? There is a different type of vibration just being around melanated people who are just in tune with who they are. But then you can experience a different vibration, likewise being around African people, African-born people, that is not that high. It's not that high. You know what I'm saying? So, I think we gotta go deeper. We gotta go deeper into ourselves, spirituality, to get off this stage of politics, you know, to know that it's important for us to fight, which is our God-given right, to fight, to protect, to self-preserve who we are. Yes, that's natural. That goes without saying. But it's how we go about doing it. What does that look like? How does that manifest itself? You know? All this division.
Which reservation are y'all going to go to? Which reservation are you pretendians going to go to where you're going to be considered part of the family? See, what you're doing is not new. Puerto Ricans,
it looks like it's chopping up, but it's okay.
Showed up in America, said,
I'm
I don't
still
want to be black. Black people don't get no respect. They start calling themselves Hispanics in Spanish. You're doing the same thing they did. You're in America, you don't want to be black, so you're going to start calling yourself a Native American. That's okay. Be a pretendian. No problem. But I want to be really clear. I want to be clear. When the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy opens, it's only for Africans. Pretendians are not allowed. I want to make sure y'all understand me. I don't want no misunderstandings.
Now, for him to say he doesn't want misunderstandings, but he's participating in his own misunderstanding. That's why you got to be careful. Listen, read between the lines what people say, right? Like I say, I love Dr. Umar Johnson, but it has to be brought to light, yo. He's participating in his own misunderstanding. He keep repeating, I don't want misunderstandings, but you just completely misunderstood where I come from. Because where I came from was simply to say, this is part of my heritage. I'm not here to say, oh, I'm Native American. Who cares about that?
All events are for Africans. Pretendians
but he's creating his own enemies.
FBAs, none.
So he says pretendians or Native American, Black Native Americans, ADOS, African descendants of slaves, and foundational Black Americans aren't allowed. Wow, that's a significant portion of African people. This is where I'm posing the question. I hope this video is still in sync. I don't know, it's been chopping up. But even if it's not, I want you guys to hear what I'm saying. Is seeing what I'm saying, how I'm saying, and obviously that's important too, but you can hear what I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying. the title of this video, I asked the question, do we need another Pan-African leader? It just makes me wonder, has he folded to the attacks? Because we know his narrative that he was speaking, the mission that he was on years ago when he first started, obviously has been intercepted, right, by the powers to be. He knows this, and he sees it, and I unfortunately had to witness it, and kind of was a part of those attacks. The recipient, I was like a recipient of his attacks when I went publicly to express my support of him and his mission. And I think that is kind of what changed things for him, because he interpreted that as like, oh, well, this is coming from my own people. So of course it's going to make you develop a different reaction and interaction with your own people, knowing that it's your own people who are responsible for your demise or your downfall, who are your detractors, who are trying to tear you down and don't want to see you build an FDMG Academy. And it's like, you see the circular causation of what's happening, right? So, not to say all of his haters, but let's say in his mind, he created haters, right? He viewed people as, they're hating me, when maybe they were just offering a suggestion, right? Maybe they just had a simple question to want to know, oh, well, can you show us the floor plan of the school? Or can you show us, the timeline of different things you want to do as it relates to the school? I've seen this, and he'll automatically just snap. Like, he takes it as, in his mind, oh, you don't trust me, and you don't ask how white organizations this, but you asking. It's just like, no, there's a way to do things, and anyone knows, especially when it comes to a nonprofit organization and when you're collecting funds from people, especially of that amount, you have all of these plans made public and you share this with people. This is what I'm going to do. He hasn't quite done that. He's done it verbally, but not like visually, where people can go and see and have a hard copy of these plans. Not to say you have to be specific in everything you do, but it's just certain things, certain nuances, right? And that's an example. And even with me, you guys got to watch this, and I've shared this with you guys here from this video clip, misinterpreting a statement, a comment that I made, right? It's just like, this is a pattern that you have where a person just poses a statement or an innocent question and you automatically think that they're your enemy, then you've created all these enemies now. And haters, and that's counterproductive to your mission. Your mission is to unite all African people across the diaspora, but you're attacking all these different sects of African people. What's happening here? I know a lot of people are like, oh, I told you, sir. I told you.
People who do not come from Africa.
Maybe when that came on my video, I told you he ain't shit. I feel like there's a way, and a right way and a wrong way to do things, right? And so, yeah, a lot of y'all came to me and commented on my videos and like, oh, why are you following him, this and the other, da-da-da-da. I don't like that approach, right? I just think that if we have self-love and we see Dr. Umar Johnson as a reflection of us, right? He is us. He is me. Dr. Umar Johnson is me. I am him. That's how I see it. I feel like there should be a different approach when we see something, like when we see one of our brothers or sisters kind of falling, right? Even if they are a leader, it's just a certain like approach you take, to that in love, right? Not to attack, but to do it in love. And so that's the approach that I've taken, right? Who he is who he's gonna be, and I feel like he has every reason for his defense. This is not the first video I've made, concerning Dr. Umar Johnson and his mission, right? When I was back in LA pursuing my doctoral studies, I did a whole psychoanalysis on Dr. Umar Johnson. I talked about the need for his defenses, right? All of these defenses that he has up. He's just so guarded and so combative, and people say like an innocent comment, and he's just like, yeah, yeah. Yo.
I respect your right to choose. I respect, but because I am about African solidarity, I don't want anyone who is ashamed of their race coming to my events.
You hear what he just said? I don't want anyone ashamed of their race. But isn't that your work as a clinical psychologist who's African-centered? This is why I'm saying it's important to do like a periodic evaluations, right? For him. This is for him, right? And for any other like business owner, leader, whatever, to just take an analysis of yourself. Because if you say your mission, you started out your mission is to wake up the minds, and you even said that's part of your mission, you know, with the school in particular, right? To awaken the African mind. Then you say it's like a contradiction to say, oh, you don't want people who are shamed. Well, when you look at Black identity, and my dissertation was on Black identity development, it is a process, right? So Black people initially are self-hating. That's what we've learned. That's what we've internalized racism, right? But over time, we become awakened through direct experiences with racism, right? This is a very dynamic issue here. So I want to make it seem like it's a small issue, right? Many different pieces that are involved. But just to know that it's a process. Identity development, when you're talking about consciousness of who we are, that's a process, right? He is in a certain level of his process, but not to say he's self-actualized either and at the pinnacle of this identity development process, because he has clearly his own flaws that are playing out. And when you talk about, oh, self-hating Africans, are you speaking about yourself? Do you truly love African people who represent a certain group or sect that you feel strongly against? Let's say Native Americans, even though there were Black Native Americans, homosexuals, right? Even though some people are born a certain kind of way, just genetically, right? We forget that biology drives a significant degree of our behavior. You can pinpoint a biological, neurological basis to many of behaviors within humanity, pinpointing back to just that. You can. It's just, that's what it is. You gotta, if you study science. So, to attack your reflection, other Black people, because they identify with certain identities, right? They have certain identities. These are Black people. These are African people that you recognize that they're African, right? Maybe they're still struggling with taking pride in who they are. Should your approach be judgmental, be demeaning? I don't think that's effective. Why? Because all it's going to do is stir up that combative response in other people. The approach of shaming Black people. Oh, you're a self-hating coon. You don't know yourself. I mean, granted, that was the tone that many Baptist preachers took, right? Like the likes of Martin Luther King, and trying to awaken that inner spirit, right, of revolutionary within Black people. But in holding a PhD in clinical psychology, I would think, like, he knows. Of course, every psychologist has their own flavor, their own style, so to speak, and how they intervene and conceptualize human behavior and treat human behavior. And I think his tone, because I even said this to him, I was like, yo, I love your tone, keep it, right? Like that sharpness and delivery when he's doing his lectures. But I do think we're diverse people, right? So does that work for every African, though? Is every African receptive to that yelling and you're self-hating and attack, like you feel attacked, like whoa, I can identify with that. I can accept that. I'm receptive to that. Why? Because that's kind of household I grew up in. My mom had that same level of kind of like energy, just like militant kind of shit, like you respond, right? So I can, I get it, but it just makes me wonder how effective is that? I'm about to end this video.
I don't want anyone who is ashamed of their race coming to my event. So no pretendians will be allowed at FDMG. Just so you know. Don't try to come back over to this side of the fence once the school is open, because that's what most of y'all want to do, because you don't know what the hell you are. You just following politically uneducated YouTubers. Stay on the pretendian side of the fence. Don't come over to the African side of the fence when FDMG opens up. And I want all my FDMG...
I had to say also in response to that, it's not that black and white. It's a gradient of identity development that black people are under, Even himself, he got to be honest with himself. And I feel like a good leader leads, right? You're an example. So you don't try to walk around, you're so like narcissistic and pompous and like, oh, I'm very much immersed in my African identity, and I don't struggle with African identity because I'm just so deeply self-actualized and I just know who I am. And like, how? But you want people to relate to you. Are you that relatable though if you're putting yourself up here in a sense where, oh, you're just an epitome of African American who knows his identity. You're just the epitome, the perfect representation of this person. No, people don't look for perfect people to relate to because we're all imperfect, right? We're the same. We're all the same. And so to take a degree of humility, and I think that's just the universe sending people who oppose him, so to speak, in a way to balance out some of that energy so that he is not being the cause of his own downfall, right? Like they say, pride comes before a fall, that you're not that way, that you don't shoot yourself in the foot, but there is a balance so that, yes, you understand and you are working towards this in terms of African identity and acceptance and self-love. But at the same time, you still recognize that, yo as a black American, okay? You a nigga too, right? And you struggle with some of the same things that self-hating Negroes or coons, like, come on, don't act like you don't. We all live in the same country. We all live in the same society, in the same world. And if anybody fucking has to struggle, I feel like it's struggling the most is probably him when it comes to his own identity. Having multiple degrees, now considering going back to get another piece of paper, another credential. You need another credential from the white man. You want another credential from but you don't have identity. Okay. I'm just saying though, we gotta come together. Stop pointing the fingers. We all have the same struggle. You can speak from a place of love to let people know, listen, we in this together. You talk about black people dating outside their race or going to the white man and the white man this and the white. And you going to the white man, you taking the white man LSAT to get into the white man's law school, to get a white man's credential. To fight for your people though.
If you catch any pretendians at the school...
You see the discrepancy, right? That's all I'm trying to point out. The discrepancy. That's it.
The FBAs or ADOS at the school. Pretendians, FBAs, and ADOS. The three Negro tribes. If you catch anybody from the three Negro tribes trying to gain access to an event at FDMG, please let me know so they can be escorted out by security. I don't want anybody ashamed.
It reminds me of the Crips and the Bloods. We're all black, right? Like, Well, you don't want this kind of black person there. You don't want that kind of black person there. Do you see the error in that?
On December the 10th.
All right. So on that note, I think he said one more thing that I wanted to point out, and then I am going to end this video. And I feel free for you guys to leave your comments below. Where is it? I think it's that timestamp 1:37.
And on November the 11th, the anniversary of the hanging of Prophet Nat Turner, Angola, Sao Tome, and Principe all get their independence from Portugal. On November the 25th of 75, Suriname gets its independence from Netherlands. I went to Suriname. The Prince of Pan-Africanism went to Suriname, South America. Shout out to all my Surinamese Africans. I want to come back to Suriname whenever y'all ready.
Do you hear that? So he just threw up, shout out to my Surinamese Africans. South America. That's a certain sect of African people. What does he have against Native American African people? But anyway, on that note, I'm going to end this video. I'm just pointing out the obvious. If there are divisions within the black community, and he has that much influence over black people, not just in America, but globally, perhaps he could be contributing to that division. People are following him. I continue to follow him, clearly. Follow him in terms of like staying up to date with his lives, and I tune into some of his lives when I get a chance. Of course, I got my own mind though, so when it comes to follow in that practical sense, I don't know about following like that. I'll follow my internal guide. That, like I said, that's a different degree of spirituality. I follow my internal guide, and this my internal guide that which guided me to go live and do this video. I thought about it. I was like, I'm like, no, it needs to be said. It needs to be said. So feel free to share your comments below, you guys. Some things just may not be what they seem. I said this before. I say perhaps, all of this bickering and fighting and infighting, shall we say, within our group, could be very purposeful. It's necessary. It could be posing like a distraction for, let's say, the power structure, white supremacy, anything like, oh, we ain't got our shit together. But meanwhile, we got our shit together. Alright, I'm going to end on that. I love you guys. Catch you guys in the next one. Oh. Peace.